I've made a number of videos focusing on many characters throughout Touhou at this point, and as a result, I've come across a lot of neat information regarding those characters that I've been glad to share. So now I'm doing a video naming one piece of useless trivia for every official character in the series. Some of these may be rehashes of things I've mentioned in previous videos, if I think they're interesting enough to reiterate. But for the most part, I'll try to choose trivia that isn't too basic, while also trying not to choose something extremely boring for the sake of uniqueness. Now then, I'll be going in game order and order of appearance, and I am including PC98. Please forgive the extreme lack of trivia to pull from here, but I hope you find at least a quarter of them interesting. Reimu's full name, Hakure Reimu, is the same in both eras of Touhou, though the kanji used is slightly different. Here is PC98 Reimu's name, and here is Windows Reimu's name. The character for Rei is slightly changed, but the reading is basically the same. Sengyoku is often regarded as three individual beings, but you only ever see one of them at a time in-game, the orb being the most prominent during the fight, and the only form in the ending art. The kanji in the background of Yugen Magan's fight changes color based on the attack it's using. Elise is one of three characters in the series that can turn into a bat, but she is the only one who can be damaged in this form. One of Sariel's fight backgrounds shows an image of Reimu that isn't present anywhere else in the game. Mima appeared on the cover of Aku's Untouched Score Volume 4 in 2007, making this the only canon appearance Mima has ever made in the Windows era. Kikuri's in-game sprite makes her look like an image carved into a surface, though the ending art depicts her a lot more unrestrained from her disc, implying a flexibility to the female form within the moon that is often seen in the few fanworks she appears in. There are two characters on the left side of Kongura's outfit that are extremely hard to make out. Through bombing or pausing, you can change most of the game's red into green, better revealing the characters, though I still don't know what it says. Genji is the only PC98 character with dialogue not mentioned in the Mystic Square all-cast extra credits. Rika's little sprite before the pre-fight dialogue is animated, waving her cape. That cape isn't reflected in her portrait art at all. The type of sword Maeda uses is unspecified, and comparing it to Yomu, while a bit unfair, shows it's likely not a katana. However, many fan depictions of Maeda feature a katana, and it's likely due to her Mystic Square all-cast title of Samurai. The 5 Magic Stones are the only end-stage boss in the series without an official name. Marissa's name has a typo in-game, using the kanji for pair instead of logic. The correct spelling was used in the game's omake and bad endings, as well as every other Marissa appearance to date. However, this typo is used by Japanese fans to refer to PC98 Marissa, specifically the redhead version. The explosion caused by defeated Evil Eye Sigma is an active hitbox. I hope no one has lost a run to this by accident before. Ellen's character select and omake simply refer to her as Ellen, though the dream text file refers to her as Fluffy Ellen, and she introduces herself as that to Yumemi. Kotohime is the only character in the series whose title features the kanji for Danmaku. One of Kana's most iconic features in fanworks is her stop sign, though this has never appeared in-game. It actually stems from an old Zun music comment on her theme, though this comment itself never specified a stop sign in particular. Rikako's theme does not loop for nearly 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 57 seconds to be exact. Zun acknowledged the song's length in his music comment, stating that at about 5 minutes per loop, it's the longest in Touhou, a statement that still holds true over 27 years later. Chieri's alternate outfit is actually a different character. Her story and ending explain that Blue Chieri is from the outside, while Red Chieri is a Gensokyo native who can use real magic. However, despite this, her attacks still look like Blue Chieri's fake magic. Yumemi's story mode AI is programmed with the intent to never take damage in the first round if you haven't used a continue by that point, and this applies to every difficulty. It's still possible to win this round, but it really seems like you weren't intended to. In Reimu's ending, there's a long-haired green robot serving her, though in the ending, Reimu laments to Marissa about Rukoto's inability to clean. Then Rukoto, with a broom and obviously short hair, walks in to ask Reimu where she was supposed to be sweeping again. So who the hell is this long-haired girl next to Reimu? The very last line of Marissa's ending has Mimi-chan saying Kyun, which means Mimi can speak, meaning it might be sentient. Orange's hair turns blue during her final phase, all 3 seconds of it. If your rank value is too low on easy mode, then during the Kurumi fight, the game will crash. Ellie takes more damage when timing down her phases than shooting them down. If you time out all of her attacks, she'll die when the 5th and final phase is supposed to begin. Yuka doesn't use her trademark parasol at all in Mystic Square gameplay, though it does make appearances in some of her endings. Sun's comment on Mugetsu's theme seems to suggest that Mugetsu isn't actually a maid. However, he gave her the title of maid later on in the Mystic Square all-cast. The first kanji in Gengetsu's name is the same kanji used in the word Gensokyo, and she is the only character in the series to use this kanji in their name. Sarah spins during her last 2 phases, beating Hina out as the OG by almost a decade. There is a belief that Luis is both the Stage 2 boss and the Stage 4 mid-boss. This is more than likely due to Luis reusing Luis's sprite, as there's no actual confirmation on it. It is worth noting that while both share 3 out of 4 bullet types, they each have a unique type from each other. Luis uses lasers, while Luis uses kunai. Also, Luis teleports, while Luis does not. Alice's red magic attacks put a wheel of flames around her, but every other color uses the same blue sparkles effect. Yuki's second last phase doesn't have any sound effects for her shooting. She shoots the same bullet type in her final too, but those do have sound effects. The dialogue you get when shooting down Yuki or Mai is the same for all characters, except when Mima shoots down Yuki. Instead of Mai saying she's no longer being dragged down, she refers to Yuki as the dead weight being gone. The Mystic Square Omake states that Yumeko is throwing whole-ass swords, not knives. Zun made a new theme for Shinki for the 2008 DNA Software's fan game Magus and Mystic Geometries, titled An Ordeal from God. This is currently the newest theme of a PC98 only character done by Zun to date. PC98 is finished. Now starts Windows. Just popping in for a breather, and to tell you that written work characters will be mentioned by release date as if they were games, with one exception. Although a very popular outfit design for Reimu is giving her Sarashi, Zun has never drawn her wearing it, and the few times you can see that area on his art always depicts an undershirt. There's a popular belief that Marissa's signature Master Spark was taken from Yuka. What's funny about this is that Yuka is the only pre-Windows UFO character to not have an article in the Grimoire of Marissa. Even funnier, Marissa's non-directional laser is blatantly taken from Patchouli, but it's absent from her entry in the book. The actual reason for these is that Yuka has no spell cards to write about, as POFE's attacks aren't included, and Patchouli's lasers are non-spells, not spell cards. Perfect Memento in strict sense mentions that Rumia is basically always cloaked in darkness, but the only time she seemingly isn't is on nights of a new moon. Aya's article on the Scarlet Mist incident in Bohemian Archive in Japanese Red illustrates Reimu's encounter with Rumia, and while the location is slightly off, you can't see any moon, meaning EOSD Stage 1 could have taken place on a night of a new moon. However, with Stage 6 being on the night of a full moon, Stage 1 would have had to take place weeks before the rest of the game. Daiose got an updated boss sprite for Great Fairy Wars that is noticeably larger than EOSD's. Chirno has a different spell card in the earliest version of Perfect Cherry Blossom. This spell card was called Freeze Actress, and it was replaced with Frost Columns. Freeze Actress was never seen again. Due to the nature of Mei Ling's inclusion in Immaterial and Missing Power, and her story in Hesso Tensoku, nothing she does in either game actually happens. The only arguable exception is her first fight against Patchouli, since it's unclear if she had fallen asleep by that point. Kwakuma's cameo in Strange and Bright Nature Deity led to the belief that there was more than one Kwakuma, due to the differences in hair length. Patchouli has no spell card that combines the elements of wood and earth. This is the only combination of her 5 main elements to not have any spell card attributed to them, unless you count Philosopher's Stone, which uses all 5. Sakuya's EOSD Omake gives her an age range of 10 to 20 years old, while Sakuya apparently stated in Perfect Memento in strict sense that she was in her early teens. And if you want to go off her debut to now, she's comfortably over 21. Remilia's most used title, the Scarlet Devil, comes from the fact that she is a messy eater, often staining her clothes red in the process. This is mentioned in both of her EOSD Omake and her article in Perfect Memento in strict sense. Flandre is often referred to in fanworks as Imoto-sama. Imoto-sama! It is a very popular nickname for Flan. However, it was only ever used in canon once by Patchouli during her mid-boss text against Marissa. Aku claims that there are no reports of anyone seeing Letty outside of winter. However, she makes a cameo in Hopeless Masquerade, a game set in summer, even if Hopeless Masquerade happened after the fact. Chen makes a real goofy expression in both Reimu and Sakuya's route, though for Sakuya, she does it twice. And both times are when Sakuya is the one talking. I don't know if this is the only instance of expressions changing when the character isn't speaking in the series. It very well could be. The Touhou 8 Trial Omake explains that Alice was brought back in PCB to set up a partner for Marissa for an idea of a future human yokai team game. Zun later said in Strange Creators that she was brought back in PCB with the intention of misleading people on the story's direction. While the stated reasons seem to have shifted a bit in the decade gap between comments, the important part is that Alice came back. According to Zun's emails, Lily White's lack of speech in PCB isn't because she can't speak, but because she's expressing herself via something like body language. Lily still hasn't spoken in any of her other game appearances she's made ever since, but she does have user comments in the Grimoire of Usami, if you want to count that as her speaking. Lunasa has placed higher than her sisters on every Touhou project popularity poll since their debut. Merlin and Lyrica have passed each other many times, but neither have ever come close to reaching Lunasa's individual popularity. Merlin's ability to lift people's spirits with her music is reflected in POFE's Versus mode, where whenever she wins a set, her opponent will have a smile on her face. Lyrica's keyboard in PCB is signed with the initials LP, and got a seemingly new keyboard in POFE that says Prism. That itself would be enough, but I wanted to mention that Lyrica isn't the only LP in the family, and given that the Prism Rivers didn't start playing music until after Layla had passed, it's possible this PCB keyboard was a personal belonging of someone else. The nickname Myon is used to refer to Yomu's phantom half in the West. However, it's always been a nickname for Yomu herself, and is used as such by the Japanese fandom. Yuyuko underwent 2 name changes in PCB's development, starting with Ayaka, then becoming Yuyuka, until settling on Yuyuko. The only time Ron has ever taken off her hat was in the border team endings in Imperishable Night. However, the first time we could see under the hat, specifically her ear, was when she was defeated in the extra stage. Yukari's appearance as a boss in every game after PCB uses some alternate colored version of the PCB portrait. They also use the PCB spellcard background that isn't recolored at all, except for in Violet Detector, where all of Yukari's appearances use her partner's spellcard backgrounds. Every album that Renko appears on features her hat in some way, except for Dateless Bar Old Adam, where not only is the hat missing, Renko is also wearing a white hairband ribbon. According to Neo-Traditionalism of Japan's Track 10, Maribel's ability has evolved to the point where she can share what she sees with others by covering another's eyes with her hands, although this ability is currently unstable. This ability isn't explored at all after this, but I think it's worth noting, as it's seemingly something that Maribel can do, that Yukari cannot. Tokiko makes a single cameo after her debut in Curiosities of Lotus Asia in Forbidden Scrollery, though it's only a visual appearance. Renosuke is often associated with the theme Kids Festival Innocent Treasures. However, this is actually Zun's theme. Zun did compose an original theme for Renosuke titled Curious Old Shanghai Tile for the fan game Touhou Unreal Mahjong, so technically, he has an official theme of his own. According to the Strange Creators interview with Unabara Iruka and Zun, Tassifro originally wanted to give Suika white eyes, but it was shot down by Zun saying that it would have been trying to catch a trend and wouldn't age well. Wriggle's last word spellcard comment reads, I think Wriggle is a bit slow in the head. It's a pity, since she has to face the player characters in this title. Chirno might be better for her to play with. It's more likely that Wriggle, and by extension Mystia, ended up forming Team 9 with Chirno, Dai, and Rumia due to similar stage boss positions, but Zun's comment here could have played a small role in that. Mystia's ability to cause night blindness comes from a misinterpretation of a passage about sparrows in a yokai dictionary. The entry in question was, Yoro Suzume wo toreba yamosho ni naru, translated to, catching a sparrow at night gives you night blindness, and it was misinterpreted as, Yosuzume wo toreba yamosho ni naru, translating to, catching a night sparrow gives you night blindness, due to Japanese grammar reasons. This mistake wasn't by Zun, but by Mizuki Shigeru, the author of Gegege no Kitaro, an extremely prolific name in the world of modern yokai interpretation. The kanji used for Kaina's surname, Kamishirasawa, literally translates to Upper White Swamp. However, the kanji used for White Swamp are the same used in the word Hakutaku. What's funny about this is that an Aku's article in Therion Tropes regarding acquired Theriontropy fits Kane perfectly. Basically what this means is Kaina became aware Hakutaku later in life, not from birth. So unless she changed her name after being cursed, her name was some kind of prophecy. Tei's most used design comes from her POFE portrait, although she is often portrayed as barefoot like she was in Imperishable Night. The reason for this is likely because the only full body image of Tei available in POFE is the character select screen completely colored blue. Rayson's boss attack sprite in POFE is just her Imperishable Night sprite recolored, trying to make the blazer look like her shirt by painting it white. Rayson's alt costume just straight up uses the Imperishable Night sprite, with no edits at all. Aiden's butterfly dream pills are said to give the user pleasant dreams. She also sells a nightmare version. The effects of the regular pill have only been described by Aya, but we can see what the nightmare pill could look like in scene 9-3 in Shoot the Bullet, of which Aiden recommended Aya try at the end of her interview. The A and Tei crew consists of 4 characters, Tei, Rayson, Aiden, and Kaguya. Despite this, Kaguya has never interacted with Tei in any unquestionably canon work. One of Mamizo's spell cards in the fighters transforms her opponent. Moko seems to transform into some type of fire rat, possibly in reference to one of Kaguya's treasures, the fire rat's robe. Anyways, Moko and Mamizo have a special intro where Transform Moko has set Mamizo's tail on fire, meaning prior to the fight, Mamizo pulled a little prank that quite literally got her ass cooked for. Aya's wings appear in numerous instances in written works, most notably in her debut work, Bohemian Archive in Japanese Red. But these wings are absent in every game appearance Aya has ever made to this day. Medicine is often shown with her little doll pal, but there are a couple instances where it's missing. Her back sprite, this cameo in Wild and Horn Hermit, and most notably, her POFE ending. There have only been 3 instances since Yuka's return to Windows where she has appeared in canon without her parasol. Komachi's POFE Omake states that she demands spirits to pay with all they have, and those that hesitate to do so are thrown into the river midway. Perfect Memento in strict sense assumes that if your assets dip into the negative, you'll never reach the other side, and likely end up tossed in the river. Eiki's pre-battle dialogue with Komachi does have Komachi slip about how bad guys often have interesting life stories, so it's actually believable that she would ferry them to a certain extent before tossing them overboard, instead of just refusing to ferry to begin with. Eiki's AI works similarly to Yumemi, in that she won't take intentional hits in the first round, though I don't know how it works when a continue has been used, and this doesn't apply on easy mode. Interestingly, Eiki slightly differs in that if you enter her stage with 0 lives remaining, she can take intentional hits in the first round, but not until nearly 5 minutes have passed. Out of the golden era. Are you still with me? Take a moment to recollect, and let's continue. Aku's debut appearance was Aku's Untouched Score Volume 1, released about 7 months prior to Perfect Memento in strict sense. She's mainly categorized with the written work characters, but technically she is the same as Renko and Maribel. Reisen falls out of the sky wearing the exact same outfit as the Earth Rabbits, as somehow she had heard on the moon that Earth Rabbits dress like that. You can see other Moon Rabbits in Chapter 7, albeit for 3 panels, all wearing casual clothes, and Reisen is now in Lunar Defense Corps uniform, before she is drafted into the corps by the Watatskis. So on top of where she got Earth Rabbit clothes, where did she get the blazer and skirt? Yorihime's character sketch doesn't feature a sword, but does show a purple notebook. This notebook can be seen on Yorihime a few times throughout Bugetsu Show. Zun's comment on Yorihime in Who's Who states that this notebook is actually a computer in the shape of an old book. Much like her sister, Toyohime's character sketch doesn't feature her signature weapon. According to Zun, it being a fan was Aki Eida's idea, as Zun didn't explain the weapons to them. If you delay shooting down Shizuha's first non, you can effectively play the rest of the stage with Shizuha as a special guest. Minariko smells like sweet potatoes. She tells Reimu that freshly harvested sweet potatoes make up her perfume. The purple aura that surrounds Hina in-game is the misfortune she's gathered. This aura actually moves around during her attacks, and the majority of her Danmaku comes from it, and not Hina directly. Nitori is a bit infamous for having undergone a personality change come Hopeless Masquerade. According to an interview with Zun and Unabara Iruka in Strange Creators, it was a pretty deliberate decision from Zun to make her like this. Iruka even comments, "Wow, she's nasty." Hamino Momiji's non doesn't clear the screen of her bullets. She also shares the same enemy intrusion deal as Shizuha. In Sanai's Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom Legacy ending, Suwako mentions that the Ultramarine Orb Elixir side effect would have rendered Sanai a clean human. The ending seems to suggest that this means Sanai would have ceased to be a half-god if she took the elixir. Kanako Shiminawa represents the figure of an entwined snake. Suwako's Omake mentions that part of the reason she wears this so much is it serves as a casual reminder that she won against Suwako. The iron rings that Suwako uses are actually hula hoops. At least, that's what Suwako told Marissa in her grimoire. Iku's sprite in Double Spoiler is lacking her Hagoromo. I guess Zun realized how much of a pain in the ass it was to draw, though he has at least drawn it once before. In Tenshi's scenario in Antinomy of Common Flowers, Mamizo remarks that Tenshi is quite short. Her being on a keystone already makes this clear, but height acknowledgement in universe is rather rare in this series. Kasume's spell card art is a much different resolution than every other character in the game. She kinda looks like she's made of felt paper. Yamame appeared on this Subterranean Animism demo CD upside down, something she didn't end up doing in-game. She did appear almost upside down in her Symposium of Post-Mysticism art, properly upside down in her Hopeless Masquerade cameo, and upside down in a few attacks from Goyoku Ibun. Mention of Parsi's jealousy is only present in 4 of the 6 shot types, 2 of which are explained by your shot type, and only in Reimu and Aya's out is it in context of Parsi being jealous of the protagonist. Zun's manuscript for Lotus Eaters chapter 35 and 36 don't specify Yugi's outfit, so the choice to put her in her blue kimono was made by Mizutaki, the artist. Not terribly surprising when you consider her last official appearance at the time was Goyoku Ibun. Marissa claims that Satori's mind reading only extends to what you're currently thinking, so she uses terrible souvenir to dig up past trauma, which makes sense when you look at how the fight works. However, both Aya and Hatate's capture comments of vague recollection of Kinkakuji make it clear that it was in fact a vague recollection, meaning to a certain extent, Satori can read older memories without hypnotism, though to begin with, the original comment was written by Marissa, and never actually confirmed by Satori herself. Unlike Chen, Orin seems to lack her tails in human form. The earliest instance where this wasn't true was her famous Hopeless Masquerade dance. Then again 4 years later in the Underworld tour ad in Alternative Facts in Eastern Utopia. Human form Orin with tails has been more common as of recent, present in her unfinished Dream of All Living Ghost Sprites, this page in Lotus Eaters, and cheating Detective Satori. Satori's Grimoire Marissa portrait shows Orin and Oku in their animal forms, and we can see 3 legs on Oku. This means that Oku can still go Raven form, and that big-ass eye brooch thing isn't visible when she does. One of Koishi's victory animations is a reference to Terry Bogard, specifically the one where she turns away from the camera and throws her hat. Okay! Nazarin's pre-battle dialogue with Seiden suggests that Nazarin currently lives at Myoden Temple, though it was claimed by Akyu in Symposium of Post-Mysticism that Nazarin lives in a cottage out by Muenzuka, and only visits the temple at Sho's request. Granted, Akyu's information is 11 years prior to this conversation. Symposium of Post-Mysticism lists the Hakurei and Moria shrines as main places for Kogasa activity, but the article only talks about the human village and Myoden Temple. Moria Shrine could be explained from her defeat text in Sanae B route, though there's not really anything specific for the Hakurei Shrine, as at the time, Kogasa making Reimu's needles wasn't a thing. Both of Ichiden's wind poses have alternate versions. Sometimes the bowl is replaced with a wooden fish that she continuously hits, and the more notable, her idle wind sometimes takes her zukin off, fully revealing her hair. Hatate's comments on Murasa's scenes confirm Murasa's ladle is bottomless, though the only appearance she's made where you can clearly see this is her cameo in Lotus Eaters. Bonus fact, Hatate theorizes Murasa used anchors due to her ladle being bottomless, and while the next scene confirms her ladle works just fine, she also was shown in Symposium of Post-Mysticism sinking Komachi's boat with a bucket, so the idea that she uses more than her ladle to sink still holds water. Sho appears in the opening of Hopeless Masquerade when it mentions the religious factions making their move. Miko, Futo, Reimu, and Byakuten are all visible and playable, though in Sho's case, she's only a cameo, and Ichiden, who's missing here, is playable instead. Byakuten's air scroll is a magical item she made while in Makai that contains the sutras required for her to activate her superhuman abilities. Symposium of Post-Mysticism notes that this thing apparently has an auto-chant mode by waving it over your head, which explains why Byakuten is able to do all she does during the UFO fight. According to Zun in a Strange Creators interview, Nue being either a Nue or a little gray type of alien was a last-minute decision, stating that if she was an alien, she would have overlapped with the lunar capital, which would result in Zun having to develop what space was like, which he thought would be a mess. It does beg the question though, if Nue did end up as an actual alien, would her name still be Nue? Hatate is the only playable character in the series to not have her own theme. Sunny Milk was blonde in Eastern and Little Nature Deity. Luna's dress showcases the lunar cycle on it, a detail that was originally done by Zun. According to Hirasato Makoto's artist comment for the Three Fairies of Light's Who's Who entry, Luna was the only fairy of the three that Zun incorporated a light motif on. Sunny's sun sleeves and sash, and Star's star pattern along her outfit were designed by Hirasawa to match Luna. Interestingly, there is an image of Sunny Milk drawn by Zun where you can see a little half-sun on her sash, that dates back to Eastern and Little Nature Deity. Star's eye color was changed from gray to yellow come Strange and Bright Nature Deity. While not the only change, the significance of this particular one is that the three fairies now reflect each other's general color, with Luna having red eyes, Sunny having blue eyes, and now Star having yellow eyes. An interview with Zun and Chara Melfebvre mentions Kassen and Byakuten were potential extra stage bosses for 10 Desires. A fan-made Phantasm stage for the game, presumably made not that long after this interview, featured Kassen as its boss. This Phantasm stage is not downloadable anywhere, so this video on screen might be the only record of the original script left. The Strange Creators cross review for 10 Desires states that Kyoko is very good at reciting sutras, but doesn't understand them in the slightest. Yoshika's Boom Boom Maru article says that there is no way to communicate with her at all about her intentions, so Oren was called in as she is able to talk to corpses. That makes sense, except all of the playable characters were able to talk to Yoshika just fine. The only explanation outside of, it's a game, is that Yoshika learned to communicate between the article's date and the 10 Desires incident. Seiga is referred to as a wicked hermit by a number of characters who know her, one of which even being Zun. An interesting exception is Kassen, who wonders if extending one's lifespan is truly a wicked thing, although Kassen doesn't seem to know anything about Yoshika when considering what else would make Seiga a wicked hermit. Tojiko's skin is a noticeably pinker tone than every other character in the game, and, well, the series for that matter. You can't even attribute it to her being a ghost since Yuuko is in the same game and looks nothing like it. Futo's Strange creator's Zun comment states that the ribbons tied to her hands, feet, neck, and hat all correspond to the 5 colors of feng shui. Her fighting game appearance adjusts her outfit to give a purple bow tie and make one of the yellow feet ribbons blue, so she still represents the 5 colors, but in a much clearer, and frankly nicer looking, way. Symposium of Post-Mysticism refers to Miko's earwear as earmuffs, whereas prior in the Shada Mel February interview on 10 Desires, Zun referred to them as headphones. Regardless of which it is, or if it's both, the important part is that Zun made Miko's crazy hair tufts as a stand-in for her ears. One of Mamizo's portraits in Hopeless Masquerade gives her 6 fingers on her raised hand. If that wasn't enough, one of her intros is her showing off her figure, except it was just a tanuki, and her barrier block turns her into a Jizo statue, like Mario's tanuki suit. I couldn't settle on just one Mamizo appearance, so I included more than you wanted, just like Zun. Kozuzu's character title and character theme share the same name, that name being the bibliophile with a deciphering eye. Kokoro's special intro with Nitori can pull from 3 different masks, one of which is a silver Hisotensoku mask, though I couldn't tell you with confidence what the other masks are a reference to. That concludes the next era. There's still a good number left, and there won't be another break until the end, so feel free to catch a breather before continuing. All of Wakazaki Hime's in-game appearances take place on the Misty Lake, and you can see in her boss sprite she is resting on the water, and not actually flying. The only time this gets confusing is that she's also performing in the Grimoire Busami's Danmaku fireworks, so maybe she can fly after all? Sekibanki's heads are intangible in all of her spell cards except Multiplicative Head, where all the copies can be destroyed. Interestingly, the head directly above Sekibanki can be destroyed as well, but it has significantly more health than the other heads. Getting too close to Banki's body creates a constant pink wave of bullets, and of course the timer, so you'd never be able to do it in a real setting. But it does effectively end the spell card, provided you keep your distance from the body. Kagura's defeated art has no actual battle damage to her outfit at all. Instead, she is covered in hair, something she actively tries to avoid. Yatsuhashi's red strings are representative of her instrument, the koto, though she has never actually appeared with a proper one, making her the only clearly named Tsukumogami to not feature their object. In Forbidden Scrolleries, Chapter 16, Benben can be seen playing her instrument near Yatsuhashi with a noticeably longer score. Given that Yatsuhashi's score is absent, it's possible that they're able to combine them for whatever purpose that serves. And this merging of score is made much clearer in the sisters' Who's Who image, if you want to count that as canon. Seijo debuted with a streak of red highlight in her hair, though her appearance in Impossible Spell card put a bigger emphasis on a white highlight with multiple red highlights, which can be seen reflected on her player sprite. However, this portrait art is only used in the game's menus, with all the story bits reusing Seijo's double-dealing character portrait. Shimi's portrait art in the fighting games depicts her riding in a very detailed bowl. However, the bowl she's riding in her player sprite is much simpler in design. What's neat is that simpler design is actually the same design as the bowl she wore on her head in her debut. Raiko's first 8 spell cards are numbered 1 through 8, though the 4th card is actually written as Death Drum. This is due to the pronunciation of death and 4 in Japanese both being she. Sumireko's uniform is annoying. She debuted with long sleeves, and in Violet Detector, they were short. In Wildhorn Hermit, she appears again in the short sleeve version, and it's clearly indicated that it is her summer uniform, which means her fighting game version should be her winter uniform. Then there's the Cola uniform. This looks more like a winter uniform. However, the chapters she appears on the cover for take place in summer and spring. Summer specifying summer break, so perhaps this outfit is actually casual clothes. But then Zun's comment in Who's Who suggests that Sumireko has only ever appeared in a uniform, so then what the hell is up with the Cola outfit? And don't even get me started on this particular cover. Good God. Seiden has no visible tail until her appearance in Unfinished Dream of All Living Ghosts showed one on her player sprite. However, Zun's music comment on her theme did actually confirm one the whole time. Ringo makes a reference to Bugetsu Show in her dialogue with Reimu, stating that Reimu seems familiar to her, and asks if Reimu came to the lunar capital a while ago. A while ago being 6 years, mind you, but Reimu was forced to show off that she can channel gods around the capital, so it's understandable someone of Ringo's position would be aware of Reimu, if only vaguely. Ringo actually appears again in Reimu's Legacy hit ending, claiming she had heard of the shrine from the rabbits who had been here in the past. If the past here is similar to a while ago, then the only rabbit Ringo could have heard of this place from was Reisen, another nod to Bogetsu Show. According to an interview with Zun and Unabara Iruka, Dorami's inclusion in Antinomy of Common Flowers was mainly because Zun wanted to include a Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom character on the roster, and Dorami was pretty much the only choice. Sagume makes a cameo in Forbidden Scrollery that shows that her hair has a braid in the back. You can also partially see this braid in her Who's Who image. You really can't tell if it's braided in the LOL-K artwork, and the Alternative Facts in Eastern Utopia article images make it look like nothing more than a small ponytail. According to Hirasawa Makoto's interview in Strange Creators, the decision for a 4th entry in the Sengetsu series was made near the end of the 3rd one. Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom, specifically Clown Piece, happened about a year prior to Visionary's debut, with Makoto stating that it was really all a coincidence. Junko's Omake states that it was a human that appeared before her with impurity wiped away, likely due to the use of some drug. This Omake would mean that Reisen's route isn't possible, nor would Sanai's point device route. All the Legacy self-clear endings mention not using the elixir, while none of the no-miss endings mention using it. This is due to the ending for the no-miss Legacy being the same as the point device clear. Sanai's self-clear ending suggests a possibility that all of the Junko defeated endings are obtained through Legacy no-miss, not point device. Sidetrack aside, the initial point here was that Junko's Omake is unreliable for canon. In an interview in Strange Creators regarding LOL-K, Zun mentioned his design philosophy for Hekatia was a simple but a little weird appearance. The planets Hekatia carries were the intended weird appearance, and the simple part Zun settled on was her t-shirt. Funny how that one worked out, huh? Little bonus here is that Zun considered changing her shirt whenever she changed form, and you gotta wonder why he opted to not go through with it. Jun's win quote against Sumireko suggests that her clothes and bag are knockoff brands. Mamizo's win quote against Jun suggests that her gems and brand names are in fact legit. And Dorami's win quote against Jun suggests that I can fix her. In the same interview mentioned at Dorami, Shion was created to give Jun a proper partner character. Though likely due to time constraints, Shion could only really be an extension of Jun's moveset rather than a full character herself. It's worth mentioning that Shion's origins aren't too dissimilar to the lanky purple lad, Waluigi, and while she doesn't really have anything in common with him, comparisons between Jun and Wario exist to wrap it all together. Churno's extra stage has Okina suggest that Eternity isn't actually a butterfly fairy, but a god Okina considers her enemy. Eternity does have some peculiarities to her. A good example is her using Peace's torch. But during the fairy confrontation against Okina, no special attention or mention is given to Eternity. This could mean that Churno's extra stage isn't canon, however a few aspects suggest otherwise. First is that in the extra stage, Churno forgot who Okina was and remembered upon confronting her. And in Visionary, Churno figured the culprit had to be the back lady. The other is that Okina only offered Churno a job upon clearing the extra stage, and in Visionary, Okina remembers Churno and asks if she had decided to work for her after all. Nemono is the only one of the first 4 bosses in the game to not know one of the protagonists. This is reflected in the endings, where An is in Reimu's, Narumi is in Marissa's, and Eternity is in Churno's. If you're wondering who appears with Aya, it's actually a rare Hatate appearance. An's final spell card splits her in 2, a reference to the fact that Komainu come in pairs. Zun's music comment on her theme states her character concept as a single divine beast acting as a pair. According to An's Grimoire Busami comment, An can't make both move independently, and she doesn't like doing it for long due to how tiring it is. In the final stage of An's route in Unfinished Dream and All Living Ghosts, An laughs at Yashie's plan, claiming that she is a pair of divine beasts and that there are 2 of her. I guess what I'm getting at here is, how exactly does An's other half even work? Narumi's cameo in Wildenhorn Hermit is the only time she has appeared in canon without any snow covering her hat. Marissa's extra stage clear has Okina offer Marissa a servant job, asking Marissa who she would like to be, and stating that Tereda in charge of life energy, or Nishida in charge of mental energy, While it's not exactly clear, it's possible that Mai and Satono's last names are more so titles given by Okina to distinguish her servants' roles. Since these two are always together, they'll share both entries. Yukari mentions in the Grimoire of Usami that Satono and Mai are stuck in the space between human and yokai. I suppose that could categorize them as human, yokai, or species completely unique to them. Okina's final spell in Stage 6 steals the player's subseason, rendering it unusable. However, there is a window where you can release before Okina snatches it, and deal damage to Okina. His damage is most notable with the winter subseason. Eika's portrait art skin color is notably darker than the other characters, though her boss sprite skin color is about what you'd expect from Zun. All of the natural born Oni characters have chains of some kind attached to them, usually their wrists. Urumi is an Ushi Oni, a type of Oni, and this chain is present on her design. It's a rather small feature that is only visible on one side, and it kinda looks like it's part of her footwear. Urumi's Who's Who portrait makes the chains a lot more noticeable, and you can see them on both legs. While one of Kutaka's expressions does indicate the little chick in her hair is chirping, none of the portraits change the chick's expression. In Goyoku Ibun, however, the majority of Kutaka's portraits show the little chick emoting to match Kutaka's expression. Bonus trivia here is Kutaka's whistle originates from this game, and it's currently her only appearance with it. Yashie received a rather surprising amount of changes from 17 to 19, the notable ones being her eyes going from red to yellow, and the absolute size of her tail. Her tail is so big that it extends into other characters' screen real estate, and the game itself takes a couple cracks at it. Examples being Yuma saying she wants to do the giant swing on her tail, and from Yashie herself in the mirror match win quote, questioning if her tail got bigger. Mayumi's only used bullet type are arrow bullets. Notably, her only personal contribution to her spell cards are single waves of purple bullets, with the exception of her final spell, where she doesn't shoot anything at all. Keiki's spell cards more or less follow the same name convention. The easy and normal versions are referred to as sculpting arts, while the hard and lunatic versions are referred to as creatures. Her last 3 spell cards are the same regardless of difficulty, with the third from last being a sculpting art, and the penultimate being a creature. Don't ask me about Idola Diabolus though. We can see Saki without her hat on in Zamu's ending, revealing a distinct lack of animal ears. Saki has visible wings and a tail, so it's strange to see the arguably most prominent aspect of the animal girl missing. Though given this is only visible in an ending, it's very possible Zun simply forgot about them. It took 28 months from Cheating Detective Satori's first chapter to reveal what Mizuchi looked like. All of Mioi's promotional appearances feature the Ibuki gourd on hand. While yes, she does possess the gourd, she doesn't actually possess the gourd. Side note, as of this writing, all of Lotus Eater's volume covers feature some kind of alcohol container in them, except for volume 6. Unless Aya can drink her pen. Yuma makes a cameo in Lotus Eater's chapter 36 and chapter 48. As of chapter 36, Goyoku Ibun was her only appearance, and her cameo reflects that. However, by chapter 48, Unfinished Dream of All Living Ghosts had released, and Mizutaki did in fact draw Yuma according to Zun's domesticated version of her. As Mike is the first boss of Unconnected Marketeers, you'd expect her to explain the rules of the game to the player. While she does tell the protagonist that they can't take the cards through force, she only mentions the 1 card per transaction rule to Sakuya. It's worth noting that Takane mentions this to Reimu, and no one mentions this to Marissa or Sanae, so they just kind of acknowledge the rule based on previous trades. Takane has 2 right hands. Even if you try to argue that the closest finger to the camera is actually her pinky, how would you explain the way she is holding those cards between it and her ring finger? For some reason, in the Unconnected Marketeers demo, Sanyo's boss sprite is reflective of her damaged art. This unique situation was fixed in the full version, but you gotta wonder how this happened in the first place, since bosses kinda explode at the end of the fight. There's no boss sprite to even see by the time the player gets to the damaged art. Misamaru is currently the only character to both know who all the protagonists were in their debut game, and address them by their names. However, how she knows everyone is not addressed at all, and I doubt it ever will be. Tsukasa was unique in her debut for being a non-final stage boss with proper dialogue that had no damaged art, as while Sagame doesn't use one either, she is confirmed to have one. This changed in Unfinished Dream of All Living Ghosts, where we can now clearly see some form of black underclothes, which when you think about it, matches her personality quite well. Megumu's response to Tsukasa attempting to fight on her behalf is the same for every character except Reimu, where instead of just calling Tsukasa a weakling, acknowledges she couldn't handle such an opponent. This uniqueness extends a bit further with Tsukasa's final line in the stage, where she exclaims that Reimu will do a proper job for them, as opposed to simply remarking on Megumi's method of betrayal. In Sakuya's alternate ending, Shimada tells Sakuya that she can open a market as long as a special event occurs, giving examples such as a meteor impact or volcanic eruption. While one of these did actually happen at the SDM, they settled on painting the ceiling like a rainbow to host indoors. Momoyo's Dragon Eater spell card is a bit buggy, or I guess a big buggy. Around the 20-second mark, the clutter of bullets stopped dispersing, but continued to spew bullets from them anyways. This might be the only spell card in the series that has never been timed out due to the absurdity of this error. Biten's outfit is very similar in design to Nemuno's. Zun talks a bit about this in Strange Creator's interview about the game, stating it was to establish a connection to the Yamamba. He also mentions Nemuno's ability, the ability to create sacred spaces, which is relevant to the game, as the plot in this plot is a Yamamba sanctuary land. Anoko's bear traps are controlled by her hand motions. This is shown quite well in her portrait art. Being as new as she is, there hasn't been much of any appearances by her. So while we know she can't get rid of the jewels she wears, there's no actual indication that she can remove the bear traps, other than common sense. According to Chiare's Omake, her species is Tenkajin, and her true form is that of a Mujina. One of Chiare's main quirks as a character is being mistaken for a chupacabra, even extending to her theme name and Zun comment. Apparently Mujina primarily refers to badgers, but is often confused as Tanuki, meaning Chiare's in-universe issues of being identified incorrectly as a more well-known creature aren't too dissimilar from her real-world basis. While the majority of Hisami's expressions heavily obscure her eyes, none of them completely hide both. Her boss sprite, however, doesn't show her eyes at all, covering that part of her face with the classic, unimportant character shadow. You can see in Zamu's defeated art that her shorts go all the way up to her boobs. I'm actually not sure if this still qualifies as shorts, and if they don't, what do they qualify as? Regardless, now that I know this, all I can think of is this. And there you go. One or more pieces of fairly useless trivia on every relevant Touhou character so far in the series. There were a number of characters who it was hard to choose just one thing for, and a number where it was hard to choose even one to begin with. By the way, if you were wondering, Great Fairy Wars was the exception I mentioned, as it felt better to include the Sengetsusei fairies as part of their game, as opposed to their original debuts in 2005. Also, if you're wondering, why did you otherwise do all entries by date of release, except for spin-off games, going off of their order instead of just grouping the characters by main game, spin-off game, and written works? Isn't that just needlessly confusing? Yes, but it got you to pay attention, right? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little project, and that maybe you learned something new. This video has gone on long enough, so I'll see myself out with this. No trivia is truly useless if it's related to your favorite Touhou. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.